All right. I just saw Linda back there. Hey, Linda. 6 p.m. service. I used to hang around and get prayed for all the time by her. My first experience with BelPres, it wasn't in a Bible study. It was in the parking lot out front, shooting heroin and smoking crack. Turns out cops, they don't go to church parking lots. I wandered into the church around 9 p.m. Looking for water to fill a syringe. And that's when I met Gustavo, the custodian here a long time ago. I'll never forget him. He was kind and welcoming. Later, I met Scott. He told me I could come and go as I pleased. It turns out Scott is the pastor here. Kind of ironic, the pastor telling a junkie to hang out for a while. I felt comfortable. I felt welcome here. I felt God's presence, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at home. Giving up drugs and alcohol, my solution to everything, was the hardest thing I've ever done. I come from a long line of addicts and alcoholics. At first, it felt like I was losing everything. I lost my freedom, my friends, jobs, relationships, and at one point I overdosed, almost lost my life. My pride had been stripped away. I was completely humbled, but I truly believe that's exactly where God does his best work. It's funny, some of my closest moments with God were in prison. You could say it's because there weren't many distractions, but I think it was because I was finally desperate enough to hear God. When I hit rock bottom, when I felt truly hopeless, when I finally let go of running life my way, that's where God met me. And I listened. Back then, I had no idea that giving up the life I knew would lead to something greater than I'd ever deserved. Today, I have a business. I'm married to an incredible woman who's also a Christian. We have 2 kids in a Christian school.
James and I met in the rooms of a 12-step program. We had both been using drugs and alcohol since we were 12 years old. Drugs and alcohol were all I ever knew and the only way I was able to cope with life. I can recall the point in time where the consequences from my addiction and lifestyle had become so catastrophic that I knew I had to quit, but I could not fathom giving up my addiction, specifically cocaine, heroin, and alcohol. When I finally gave up drugs and alcohol is when my journey with God began. When I was asked to speak today, I found myself reluctant to share that I was an atheist before I found God. And when I say atheist, I mean vehement atheist. And I was proud of it. Like, it was the whole thing. And I guess there are parts of me that are ashamed of that today, like knowing what I know now about God. As I began my journey in recovery, I remained an atheist, but I slowly started to pick up Christian tools out of desperation. For example, prayer, meditation, confession, and making amends, along with Christian principles such as honesty, unselfishness, and love. The most important lesson I learned through this experience is when you knock on God's door, he answers every time. And that's when I became a believer. I began to have a firsthand experience with God's grace, love, and power, and I have ever since. On my search for a deeper relationship with God, I found myself joining the BelPres Moms group a few years ago, and I'm still a member today. This group has made me feel a sense of community here at BelPres and has truly inspired my parenting through a faith perspective. Circling back to the day when I knew drugs and alcohol weren't working for me anymore and the immobilizing fear I had with even the thought of giving up my addiction. If I only knew how much I had to gain and what God had in store for me then.